Beloved viewers, here we are. This is going to be an international reading. I want to compare Trump's relationship with North Korea and to talk about Iran. And before I get to what the cards have to say, what I think is happening is his bullying and his aggression and his unpredictability genuinely freaked out Kim Jong-un, and I think it did force his hand to the table, and it could be one of those accidents of history where it ends up being a good result. So with Iran, it's a quite different story. Okay, North Korea, South Korea, one country, Korea, that was divided 60 years ago, 70 years ago, whatever it was, 5 minutes in terms of history. So there is a natural inclination to try and bring it back together, a bit like the German Wall. That is very different from Iran, Persia, that has been its own identity for 5,000, 7,000 years of civilization. And it has a single identity, and it's a very different ball game in Iran than it is North Korea. So I think it's important to understand those distinctions before we start. So let's see what the cards have to say, and we'll start with North Korea. So what is the actual question? Will there be a reunification of North and South Korea? Reunification, North and South Korea. All right, the card that fell out. Sorry for those who insist on first cards being seen. Falling out cards are always picked up by readers, and they're interesting. The World. It bodes very well as the first card off the rank for this happening. So it's world pressure, the world looking. The world does want this to happen. Maybe not some of the players who are making a lot of money in arms sales, including American and British arms sales. We won't go there. So that bodes well, I think. It's like the world is forcing that situation, and I think that the fact that Kim Jong-un is so young, that bodes well. So let's see what else is coming up for it here. Interesting, good, good, good. I'm quite pleased with that. So in the centre page of cups, that would be Kim Jong-un. I'm sure all the Koreans around the world are rippling with indignity at my poor pronunciation, but we do what we can here. Okay, the younger person. It is also a figure of, what's the word? Delusion a bit. So he has been brought up in a deluded way. So you can't be effectively the prince of a really strange municipality and not be weird yourself. He is weird. But I think what's happening is he also is ambitious. So he wants to be the one to change this. I think we can't underestimate the impact on a 26, 27-year-old. He's now gone to South Korea. He will be going to Singapore and so forth. He's starting to he's been to Beijing in that weird train trip. He's starting to see what the rest of the world looks like, and it's fabulous and exciting, and I think he genuinely wants to be part of that. So I think that is a big push, but I'm sure there's complications. So, in the recent past, group work, a lot of work has gone into this over and above Trump. So, if you remember with my first reading on North Korea, I had a strong sense that another Western country was working behind the scenes very closely, like not Russia and China, or a Western country. I thought it might be France, but it's actually Sweden. Sweden has been doing a phenomenal amount of diplomacy behind the scenes. But this implies group work, people working together to make this happen. That wouldn't be Trump, because he doesn't know or care what's going on. It's just, as I said, an accident of history if this comes off. So underlying this, yes, North Korea has been out in the cold, right? So that's a lonely place, it's a cold place. That is pushing it forward. Coming up is the Chariot, momentum going forward. So that all bodes well. What I'll do now is just a very quick one on their actual meeting, because in my first reading on North Korea, it turned out, from the cards' point of view, that Trump and Kim Jong-un wouldn't like each other. So let's just see how the meeting will go. The meeting with Trump and Kim Jong-un. Okay. The star. Excellent. This is all going swimmingly for this as far as it goes. Don't forget, viewers, this meeting's scheduled for the 12th of June or whenever it is. That is such a long time away in Trump time. So there's no guarantee that this meeting will happen. He might end up sending a representative, or it might collapse. But the important thing here is it gets the hope card. So it's very hopeful. So continuing just with the meeting here. All right, the Page of Wands comes up talking. They both like a chat. This is, again, the younger figure. And we know that Trump, despite his claims to the art of the deal and everything else, he couldn't even write the book, let alone seal the deal. So I think there'll be more talking than we originally anticipated by Kim Jong-un. So in other words, he's going to come to the table with a position. Trump will have looked at his 3 bullet points and not have a clue what's going on. They're going to claim the meeting was a success. And look, regardless of what the baby dictator really thinks, Kim Jong-un, or what the aging imbecile thinks, Donald Trump, if they can publicly celebrate some sort of movement forward, that represents success. The outcome is the Ace of Swords cutting through the shit. So these 2 cards together are interesting, because if you look here at this particular union and these figures, they don't quite come up with what they say they'll come up with. In other words, they're celebrating a bit prematurely. There is a risk always with the Ace of Swords that it could become more volatile, and it could be that one wounds the other in some way. They're both insensitive men, so it's more likely to be a petulant sort of thing that offends one or other party, or possibly both parties, rather than a sticking block for the political outcome. So the political outcome, as I see it, has a lot going for it. Okay, so let's hope that does happen. I say it all with reservations because it involves Trump and he's spectacularly unreliable. So now we're going to move on, because to a certain extent, what happens in North South Korea has been purring along for a long time. And I think the good news is that regardless if Trump was out tomorrow or whatever, I think that dialogue is going to keep happening. So it's beginning to happen. Iran, very different story. So this one I'm going to do a more substantial layout. And my question is about Trump pulling out of the nuclear deal. So what will happen now with the world and Iran? Oh, Queen of Pentacles. The world and Iran. What's going to happen now? Okay, let's see if we can get some context for the Queen of Pentacles. Oh, isn't it funny? You shuffle away and you still get these cards. So, the Queen of Pentacles in the middle. This could be, well, it does represent an older woman with money and power. This might be Angela Merkel in this context. Merkel has an extraordinary relationship with the rest of Europe, and I think she's trying to broker some sort of way forward. That it should come up as the centre card means it has some serious impact. So I have read that Europe is trying desperately to keep the pact somehow operating. Talks are going on, and it involves the world. The world is very concerned about this move by Trump. Very, very concerned. And part of this also is why Europe is so concerned in particular, but also India and other countries. Trump, who has refused to sanction the Russians, is keen on sanctioning Iran. And what those sanctions are very wide-ranging. It's not just stopping goods going into Iran and just stopping Iran from selling things. The sanctions go further, and they say countries dealing with Iran will be punished. This is a problem for the world because there's a lot of countries dealing with Iran. Okay, so let's go back to what the reading has to say. The King of Cups underneath here. King of Cups, the emotional. This could be, I think his name's Razani. He is the head honcho in Iran. He is very upset by this, not surprisingly. It should also be remembered that Iran has actually complied for the last 2 years with the world and international inspections. So whether you believe or not that they are complying totally and don't have secret sites, he's very upset by this. Okay, I don't think that's Trump. I think it's the Iranian leader. King of Swords. Whoa, big time. King of Swords. Justice. I keep bringing you back to the World card. The world, this is in recent past, has been working hard to make Iran comply. So actually what Trump has done, I think, reading this, is he has upset Iran, but he's upset everyone else who has worked very hard to broker this deal. It took 15 years to negotiate this, and it took him 5 minutes to undo it. So the people who were involved legally in making this happen to bring Iran to the table are also very upset and angry with Trump. Okay, on top of it all, ooh, Here we go, big time swords, 10 of swords. The feeling is, by the world, that Trump has stabbed them in the back. He's stabbed all these people in the back. And why I think they are triple-decker pissed off is because you'd have to think he's only pulled out because Obama was part of brokering it in the first place. Anything Obama did, I'm going to tear down. Ah! He is a child, and so the world is furious that the entire world is being held hostage to his spitefulness. So they feel they've been stabbed in the back by the pussy-grabbing tyrant. And they wouldn't be wrong. So a little bit further out, balancing. Yep, they're talking. They're talking and they're desperately trying to keep this afloat. He has no idea how important it is. All right, how do the players see themselves? Right, here's a bit of potential for interpersonal relationships here. So I think Europe in particular might get some success from this. The UK and Europe may be able to pull this off and keep the Iranian deal in place. What's acting against that? This will be interesting. Yes. What's acting against that, the Happy Families card, this is actually, for me, in my readings, the Republican card, the GOP card. So what has happened, I think, and what this means is the GOP have failed to impress on Trump how important this is. And because the GOP is split, there are so many isolationist ratbags, they don't get it either. And because they're not pushing Trump back to the table, this is threatening keeping the Iran nuclear deal in place. So that makes sense to me on some sort of level. The environment, which relates directly to that card, is nostalgia. They want to go back to business as usual, which is thinking about America and being used to ruling the world without understanding the world. Right? I'll just let that sink in for a moment. This is part of the problem, is that America in many ways has driven the international agenda since the Second World War, in some cases successfully, in other cases like Latin America, disastrously. So this is a nostalgia for that sort of security, but it would suggest to me here American supremacy in the form of Happy Families America is now moving into the realm of delusion. Look out, it's a very serious blow to America's esteem in the world. So the world is in the middle. The right-wing, vicious, out-of-touch Republicans and their nostalgia is driving America to a much weaker position in the world. So this is happening with the trade talks as well. People are making their own arrangements, and now America's being bypassed. The Wheel of Fortune. So karmically, this is destined to play out as it will. Now, it's come in the column of keeping the talks alive and improvement in personal relations. So that to me is holding out hope that the deal will stay in place in some sort of way. Not so good. The Hermit, retreat. Does this mean Iran will retreat? The possibility is there. Iran has threatened, you want to pull out, America? You know what? We might pull out first. You've got, in a way, a battle of the hermits. America becoming more hermit-like, and Iran being a pariah state for the West. And Iran might also be retreating to hermit mode. So let's look a bit further out here. Queen of Swords, King of Swords, Queen of Swords. So truth and justice. The Queen of Swords can be quite cruel, not always a nice person. However, in this case, I think they're quite a powerful couple. You've got the King and Queen of Swords, truth and justice. Well, look, you can't say that's massively decisive, but to me the indicators are American refusal under Trump to look outwards. It's ironically America could pay a greater price than it expects in relation to Iran. Iran is hugely powerful in its own right, and its role in the Middle East, which is very complicated in terms of funding organisations like Hezbollah. Now, to the West, they're seen as terrorist organisations. In the Middle East, they're seen as freedom fighters, the old story. So America can't assume that everyone hates Iran like they do. Iran also has the support of other countries. And the head of Iran recently, when Trump last week said, I'm going to ditch this deal, the King of Cups, pulled out the emotional card and said, you know what, I'm going to talk to the two superpowers in the world, Russia and China. That was a dig at America no longer being a superpower. So it is very foolish for America and these short-sighted Republicans who are much more concerned about who's having sex with who than they are about ruling the world in a very serious way. So, food for thought. All right, everybody. Bye.